Hey toy fans, Aaron here. Today taking a look at the Star Wars Retro Collection release of the Emperor. This figure was released in the spring of 23 and comes to us of course on that vintage inspired card back with the same image that was done for the 80s release of the figure. We are also getting that 40th anniversary Return of the Jedi logo in the top left side of the card. And as usual for the Retro Collection line, you're getting the white worn edges printed all around the sides of the card and that large Retro Collection sticker. And then of course through the blister you see your figure with the included cane accessory. Taking a look at the back side of the card where, well, there's no surprises here. The top third is talking about the Star Wars Retro Collection line being inspired by the 80s figures. Through the middle in that red section, you got a listing of the figures that are available in this particular wave. And then, of course, the bottom is your legal information. Taking a look at the figure out of the packaging, and as always, I say this with this line of figures, is that I'm looking at it with the thoughts of how the figure was made back in the 80s. Not judging it on today's standards. And with that said, and I have to say, seeing him all these years later, I'm still wondering why the action figure for the Emperor was made with gray robes instead of black. And I suppose the other nitpick for this figure would be is that the hands seem kind of freakishly large for this figure. I think a lot of the figures, though, from the 80s, this late 70s and 80s, really did have large hands anyways. Otherwise, I would say for the way figures looked back in the 80s, you know, this is really a solid-looking action figure. Not that there's much that can be done with this guy anyways. I mean, it's kind of just face, hands, and robes, and that's about it. The entire figure is molded in that dark gray color of plastic. Any pale skin that you're seeing is painted on. As far as the face sculpting of this figure, you know, if you've never seen the original release of it, you're probably not going to be too disappointed. Certainly the eyes are painted very well. I love the yellow color with the black pupils painted in, and all of that face coloring is staying pretty much right where it needs to be. You can make out some of the wrinkles in the face for the sculpting, and of course the painting of the hands matches up very well. And the wrinkles that you're seeing sculpted in is certainly going to be an area where it's going to be very noticeable from that original release. Everything is just much softer in its detail. As for the remainder of the figure, like I said, it's all robes, pretty basic sculpting. You have some nice layering to the costume, making out the outer robe, the inner robe, the little belt that wraps around his waist, and the bits that flop kind of down in front. Lots of ruffles and various folds sculpted in. Comparing this release to the original one from the 80s, some of the differences become quite noticeable for this new release. For some reason, he stands just a little bit taller than the original. This figure is measuring in at 3.88 inches, while the original is at 3.84 inches. The head, or the hood and head of the action figure, seems to be lifted up. It's not slanted down as much as it is on the original figure. As you can tell when you look at that original figure, the base of the hood rests on the body, and on this new figure it's lifted off the front of the body. Also what it does is it makes the hunch on the back not as pronounced as it was on the original figure, although I do think the main body is sculpted exactly the same. So I think it's just the placement of the head changing how that looks. And also one of the differences I'm seeing is around the waist of the figure where the top of the legs meets into the hip of the body. It's a little fuller in this new release. You're not getting as much of a gap that we had on that original figure. So maybe they made the top of the legs a little thicker or something. And then aside from that, certainly you see the better detail the original sculpt has, showing off the wrinkles of the action figure and his skin. And while some of it's present, it just isn't as pronounced in this new release. And that's something that certainly has been happening for all of these Retro Collection figures. However it is that they're getting these molds, those details are just being lost. So everything's a lot more softer in its appearance. And then if you haven't noticed already, I'll say that there is just a slight color variation between the two figures. This newer one, he's a bit darker in color. Now I am comparing him to a 40-year-old figure at this point, so maybe there's been some fading over time. As for the articulation, the head swivels all the way around. You got a full rotation of the arms and both legs come straight out and then just a little bit back. And the figure does come with a single accessory, and that is his black cane. Different from the other Retro Collection releases where many other figures have a problem holding onto their accessory, the Emperor has no problem hanging onto his cane. In terms of the sculpt, obviously it's still very identifiable as being the Emperor's cane, has a very nice black coloring to it, but the same issue as, you know, the sculpt translating, the detail from the sculpt, I should say, translating from the original figure to the Retro Collection. The same thing's happening with the cane here. A lot of the little, I don't know what you would call it, little chips, or I mean, it's kind of a wrinkly looking cane itself. If you know the cane, you know what I'm trying to say, but a lot of that detail just isn't translating over to this particular accessory. You see these two side by side, and clearly the original release is much better in terms of the detail of the sculpt than what we're getting. But overall, this still works, and honestly, for me, I'm kind of just glad he's able to hang on to it with no problems. So overall, for me, as a standard Retro Collection release, it's a good-looking figure, and as for all of them, it's great to see these original figures coming back out. Having the original figure to look back on, this one I think really hurts from the loss of detail that we aren't getting from the original molds in terms of the way the sculpt looks. Painting's fantastic. Obviously, it's great to have a nice, crispy new figure, but since so much of the looks of this action figure depend on that detailing coming through, the wrinkling in the face and such, I'd say this seems to be one of my more disappointing figures in this Retro Collection line. But honestly, I still love it. It's, as with all of these, it's great to get a brand new figure. I love that they're doing this. I wish that they could kind of get some of those details back into the sculpt. But as for everything else, obviously it's a pretty simple figure. It's hardly any painting that needs to be done, and what is there does look great. So that's going to wrap this one up. I'd love to know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.